I had always wanted to live in a quiet, peaceful suburban neighborhood. When I bought my house in Oak Ridge Estates, I thought I had found just that, a perfect slice of the American dream. The lawns were well kept, the streets were lined with towering oaks, and the houses all had that cookie-cutter charm that screamed middle-class respectability. Of course, that was before I met Karen. She was the self-proclaimed ruler of the Homeowners Association, HOA, though technically just the vice president. She treated every street like her personal domain, constantly patrolling in her floral dresses and oversized sunglasses, ready to unleash a passive-aggressive tirade on anyone who so much as left their garbage bins out for an extra hour. I had heard the horror stories from my neighbors, how Karen once fined someone for having a front door that was the wrong shade of beige, or how she had reported an elderly couple to the city for a supposed, unauthorized garden fence. But I had kept my head down, paid my dues, and mostly avoided her wrath. That is, until I installed my solar panels. I had done my research. Thanks to the new federal green energy incentives, I qualified for an 80% rebate on solar panel installation. It was a no-brainer. Not only would I save thousands on electricity, but I'd also reduce my carbon footprint. The installation was seamless, and by the end of the week, my roof gleamed with sleek, black panels, efficient, modern, and, apparently, an abomination in Karen's eyes. The first time she saw them, she nearly had a stroke. It happened on a crisp Monday morning. I was drinking my coffee on the porch, enjoying my newfound energy independence, when I saw Karen striding down the sidewalk with the fury of a woman who had just found an expired coupon. She stopped in front of my driveway, arms crossed, nostrils flaring. "Excuse me, but what is that?" I took a slow sip of my coffee. "That's my solar panel system, Karen." "Pretty nice, right?" Her face twisted as if I had just shown her a crime scene. "This is a violation of HOA standards." I frowned. "I read the bylaws. There's nothing that prohibits solar panels." Karen scoffed. "Well, they ruin the aesthetic of the neighborhood. We have standards here, and your panels," she waved her manicured hand dismissively, "are an eyesore." I resisted the urge to laugh. "Karen, I'm reducing my carbon footprint and saving money. Besides, there's a federal law that overrides HOA restrictions on solar installations." She pursed her lips. "We'll see about that." And with that, she spun on her heel and stormed off, muttering something about destroying property values and calling an emergency board meeting. I had no idea what she was capable of. 3 days later, I came home to a nightmare. As I pulled into my driveway, my stomach dropped. My roof was bare. The solar panels, every last one, were gone. Not just removed, but ripped out. Electrical wiring dangled from the roof like torn veins, and shattered glass littered my yard. The mounting brackets were twisted, some of them dangling from the gutters like grotesque ornaments. I jumped out of my car, rage boiling in my veins. That's when I saw him. A wiry old man, dressed in a paint-stained t-shirt and cargo shorts, was standing near a rusted pickup truck, casually tossing the last panel onto a pile of debris. His toolbox sat open on my lawn. I stormed over. "What the hell are you doing?" He barely glanced at me. "Job's almost done. I'll be out of your hair soon." "My solar panels, you took them?" He gave me an indifferent shrug. "Lady down the street hired me. Said they were against HOA rules." I saw red. "Put them back. Right now." He scratched his head. That ain't really how removals work." Before I could respond, I heard it, a slow, deliberate clap. Karen. She was standing on the sidewalk, arms crossed, an insufferable smirk on her face. "See?" she cooed. "Much better. The neighborhood finally looks like it should." My hands clenched into fists. "You hired someone to rip out my legally installed solar panels?" Karen waved dismissively. "Oh, don't be so dramatic. You can take it up with the HOA." I stared at her, my pulse pounding. This wasn't just petty HOA nonsense. This was vandalism. This was theft. She had no idea what was coming. The next morning, I made 3 phone calls. First, the police. Second, my lawyer. And third, the Department of Energy. The officers who arrived weren't exactly enthusiastic at first, probably assuming this was just another petty neighborhood dispute. But once they saw the damage and heard that Karen had hired someone to trespass on my property, let's just say their interest peaked. Karen's smug expression slowly began to falter as she tried, and failed, to argue that the HOA had the right to enforce aesthetic rules. One officer sighed, "Ma'am, that's not how private property works." And then came the real kicker. Later that afternoon, I got a call back from the Department of Energy. Turns out, destroying federally subsidized solar panels is a big deal. A federal offense, to be exact. Not only was Karen personally liable for the damages, but the HOA itself was now under investigation for interfering with the federal clean energy initiative. Karen had single-handedly dragged the entire HOA into a legal hellstorm. Within weeks, the fallout began. Karen was hit with multiple charges: trespassing, property damage, destruction of federally subsidized equipment, and contracting illegal work without permits. She tried to play the victim, crying about how she was just trying to preserve the neighborhood's charm. But no one was buying it. The HOA, desperate to avoid a lawsuit, disowned her. Board members resigned. The HOA president issued a groveling apology, assuring me that solar panels were now officially welcomed in Oakridge Estates. And the best part? Because my panels were part of a federal green energy program, I not only received full compensation for the damages, but I also qualified for a new rebate. So, not only did I get brand new, upgraded panels for free, but my house was now running on state-of-the-art solar tech, while Karen's reputation was in shambles. She lost her influence. She lost her allies. And she never saw it coming. Karen's downfall should have been the end of it. But if I had learned anything from my time in Oakridge Estates, it was that pettiness never truly dies. With Karen out of power, the HOA was in chaos. Some board members resigned outright, not wanting to be associated with the legal disaster she had brought upon them. Others tried to distance themselves from her actions, but the residents weren't buying it. After all, these were the same people who had cheered her on when she bullied homeowners over mailbox colors and driveway cracks. Then there was the rebellion. It started with my next-door neighbor, Greg. A quiet guy in his 50s, he had been biding his time, waiting for Karen to slip up. The moment she fell, he pounced. At the next emergency HOA meeting, held in the community center instead of Karen's overpriced backyard, Greg stood up and cleared his throat. I moved to dissolve the HOA. The room went silent. Someone actually gasped. One of Karen's last remaining allies, a woman named Cheryl, stood up, red-faced. "Greg, that's outrageous. The HOA keeps our property values high." Greg folded his arms. "Oh, yeah? Tell that to the homeowners who lost thousands in legal fees because Karen thought she was queen of the cul-de-sac." Murmurs spread through the crowd. People who had once feared the HOA now smelled blood in the water. A voice from the back: "He's right. The HOA has never helped me. They just fine us over dumb stuff." Another: "And they cover for each other. When I had a roof leak, they rejected my request for a color change, but let Karen repaint her house twice in 1 year." The crowd turned. It wasn't long before a petition started circulating. If enough homeowners signed, the HOA could be legally disbanded. Karen's reign was truly crumbling. And I was loving every second of it. Meanwhile, Karen had retreated. She was still in her house, but her once pristine front yard, where she had proudly displayed HOA-approved flower beds, was now overgrown. Her car, usually spotless, sat untouched in the driveway. She had vanished from the neighborhood gossip circuit. But the real revenge came slowly. One by one, the neighbors she had tormented over the years started getting creative. First, Greg installed solar panels, bigger and shinier than mine. Then, the elderly couple she had fined for an unauthorized garden fence? They repainted their house bright blue, a color that Karen had once banned. More houses followed suit, breaking every petty rule Karen had enforced for years. Bright doors. Unique landscaping. Even, gasp, driveway basketball hoops. Oakridge Estates was no longer Karen's neighborhood. It was ours. Of course, Karen wasn't going to go down quietly. She resurfaced in a final act of desperation, filing a lawsuit against me for defamation and emotional distress. I laughed when I got the notice. She was suing me for talking about her crimes. The case didn't even make it to trial. My lawyer, who had already destroyed her in the solar panel case, filed a countersuit for harassment. Karen lost. Not only was she forced to drop her lawsuit, but she had to pay my legal fees. By now, she was hemorrhaging money. Between the damages from my case, HOA fines, and legal fees, she was drowning. And then came the final blow. One morning, I stepped onto my porch with my coffee and saw it. A for sale sign, planted in Karen's perfectly manicured lawn. She was leaving. I almost couldn't believe it. After years of terrorizing the neighborhood, Karen was running away. I later heard through the grapevine that she had been forced to sell, legal troubles, HOA dissolution, and a complete collapse of her social standing had left her no choice. The dictator of Oak Ridge Estates was gone. With Karen gone and the HOA officially dissolved, Oak Ridge Estates flourished. Neighbors actually talked to each other now. There were block parties, community gardens, and, get this, people actually helping each other instead of policing one another. And solar panels? Everywhere. Within a year, half the neighborhood had installed them. With no HOA to interfere, the federal rebate program made it easy. The entire community's energy bills plummeted. Ironically, Karen had tried to keep Oak Ridge Estates traditional. Instead, she had inadvertently turned it into one of the most energy-efficient neighborhoods in the county. I couldn't help but smile every time I looked at my house, gleaming in the sunlight. The American dream wasn't about beige houses and power-hungry HOAs. It was about freedom. And we had won. With Karen gone and the HOA dissolved, life in Oak Ridge Estates was better than ever. Gone were the constant fines, the absurdly strict rules, and the paranoia of stepping outside without HOA approval. The neighborhood was alive in a way it had never been before. Front yards became unique expressions of the homeowners' personalities, some with wildflower gardens, others with patio furniture where neighbors gathered for evening drinks. The once pristine Stepford Wives aesthetic was replaced with something much better, a community that actually felt like home. But just when I thought Karen was finally out of my life, she found one last way to make her presence known. It started with an email. One morning, as I sipped my coffee and scrolled through my inbox, I saw it. From KarenSmith1946@email.com. Subject: You'll regret this. I sighed. Oh, for God's sake. I opened the email, already knowing it would be insane. You think you've won, but you haven't. This neighborhood was mine, and I will not sit back and watch you destroy everything we built. You'll see soon enough. Dramatic, but ultimately pathetic. I chuckled, deleted the email, and went about my day. I had no idea what she was planning. A week after Karen's email, strange things started happening. First, Greg, our anti-HOA champion, got a letter from the city claiming his solar panels were improperly installed. Then, the elderly couple with the bright blue house received a code violation notice for excessive modifications. Over the next few days, more neighbors reported mysterious complaints being filed against them, everything from noise violations to illegal landscaping. The kicker? None of it was real. Greg's solar panels had been installed by a certified company. The blue house was well within city regulations. And yet, the complaints kept coming. Someone was weaponizing city codes against us. Someone bitter. Someone who had nothing left to lose. We needed proof. So Greg, being the badass that he was, hired a private investigator. The PI's job? To track the source of the complaints. It took less than a week. One evening, Greg called me over, grinning like he had just won the lottery. You're gonna want to see this. He handed me a folder. Inside were copies of the complaints filed with the city. Every single one was submitted by Karen. Or, more accurately, by Karen's new address. She had moved 2 towns over and was still harassing us. It was insane. Greg folded his arms. So, what do we do? I smirked. Oh, I have an idea. The next day, I posted the evidence to the Oak Ridge Estates community page. Every single complaint. Every ridiculous, petty attempt to control a neighborhood she no longer lived in. The response? Glorious. The comments flooded in. Are you kidding me? She's not even here anymore. How do we get a restraining order against a former HOA dictator? We should send her complaints for existing. Then, Greg made a brilliant suggestion. Let's return the favor. That night, dozens of neighbors flooded Karen's new city with complaints, legitimate ones. Turns out, her new house had some questionable modifications. An unregistered shed in her backyard? Reported. Overgrown hedges? Reported. And the best part? Someone anonymously mailed copies of her complaints to her new neighbors. It didn't take long before Karen's new community turned against her. Less than a month later, we got the news. Karen's house was up for sale. Again. She had barely lasted 3 months in her new neighborhood before getting run out of town. Rumor had it, her new neighbors had filed a petition to ban her from community meetings. The woman who once ruled Oakridge Estates with an iron fist? Now a suburban nomad, forever hunted by her own karma. The neighborhood celebrated. Greg hosted a barbecue in honor of the great Karen exile. Someone even made Karen piñatas. And as I stood in my yard, looking at my shiny new solar panels, I smiled. Karen had tried to destroy me. Instead, she destroyed herself. And Oakridge Estates? Stronger than ever. With Karen permanently out of our lives and the neighborhood thriving, we thought the drama was finally over. We were wrong. One afternoon, Greg knocked on my door, looking unusually serious. He held up an official-looking letter from the city. "Read this," he said. I took it and scanned the first few lines. My stomach dropped. Notice of petition to form a new homeowners association. I looked up at Greg. "You're kidding." He shook his head. "Nope. Some of the newer residents are pushing for it." I sighed, rubbing my temples. "Let me guess, they think an HOA will bring order to the neighborhood?" Greg snorted. "More like they miss telling people what to do." After everything we had fought for, the Karen regime was threatening to return under a new name. This time, we had to stop it before it started. The petition was being pushed by a small but vocal group of new residents, people who had moved in after Karen's downfall and didn't remember the nightmare we had endured. At the center of it all? A man named Richard Caldwell. Richard was Karen 2.0. Same smug attitude. Same superiority complex. Same obsession with property values. He had convinced about a third of the neighborhood that an HOA would increase home resale prices and keep the area looking respectable. We needed 51% of the homeowners to reject the petition to kill it. The war for Oakridge Estates had begun. Greg, the elderly couple, and I mobilized the resistance. We knocked on doors. We reminded people of the horror stories from Karen's reign. We printed flyers. Remember when? Crossmark Karen fined an elderly man for using the wrong type of grass. Crossmark a single mom was threatened with legal action over a garden gnome. Crossmark a woman had her solar panels ripped off her roof. Don't let it happen again. Vote no to the HOA. And then, the trump card. Someone, okay, it was me, sent an anonymous letter to Richard's biggest supporters with a full copy of Karen's legal battles. Their idol had been a criminal. People flipped. Voting day arrived. Richard and his wannabe Karen army held a formal meeting at the local community center, all dressed in business casual, prepared to deliver PowerPoint slides on why we need an HOA. We showed up in t-shirts and lawn chairs, holding signs that said, "Keep HOAs in hell where they belong." When the votes were tallied, the results were clear. HOA proposal, 22% yes, 78% no. It wasn't just defeated. It was obliterated. Richard turned red as his supporters walked out mid-speech. And just like that, the ghost of Karen was buried for good. With the HOA officially dead forever, Oakridge Estates became a symbol of resistance. People from other neighborhoods started reaching out to Greg for advice on getting rid of their own HOAs. The news even ran a local story. How one neighborhood took down the HOA. Twice. We became legends. And as I stood on my porch, watching the sunset reflect off my solar panels, I knew one thing for sure. No HOA would ever control us again. Months later, Greg sent me a photo. Karen, sitting alone at a coffee shop, reading a book about starting an HOA. I laughed so hard I nearly fell off my chair. Some people never learn. For a while, life in Oak Ridge Estates was peaceful. No HOA. No power-hungry neighbors trying to enforce ridiculous rules. No one snooping around with a clipboard, ready to find someone over a misplaced garden hose. But deep down, I knew it was too quiet. Karen had lost everything. Her power, her influence, even her home. But she was still out there. And as I was about to find out, she wasn't done with us yet. It started with the break-in. One night, around 2 a.m., I woke to the sound of my motion sensor alarm. My phone buzzed with a notification from my security system. Motion detected. Backyard. My heart pounded. I grabbed my phone and pulled up the security feed. A figure was standing in my yard. At first, I thought it was some random thief, until I zoomed in. It was Karen. She was wearing all black, crouching near my solar panels. And she was holding a crowbar. Adrenaline surged through me. I had dealt with Karen's insanity before, but this was next level unhinged. I hit the emergency alert button on my phone, activating the house floodlights and blaring an alarm. Karen froze. For a second, she just stood there, caught like a raccoon in a trash can. Then, in the most Karen move of all time, she actually had the audacity to wave at the camera, like she had just stopped by to borrow a cup of sugar. Then, she bolted. But she didn't get far. By the time Karen made it to the sidewalk, 2 cop cars were already pulling up. Greg had also gotten an alert from his own system and called the cops before I even had a chance. "Looks like we caught ourselves a late-night trespasser," one of the officers said, stepping out of his car. Karen, still panting, went straight into Karen mode. "This is a misunderstanding," she wailed. "I was just inspecting the solar panels. I have every right to be here." The officer gave her a blank stare. "Ma'am, you were holding a crowbar." Karen stammered. I found it on the ground." That's when I walked up, phone in hand, and hit play on the security footage. The video showed everything. Karen sneaking into my yard. Karen trying to pry up one of the solar panels. Karen realizing she was on camera and doing the dumbest little wave before running away. The officer sighed. "All right, that's enough. Turn around, hands behind your back." Karen's jaw dropped. "You can't arrest me. I was on the HOA board." The officer snapped the cuffs on her wrists. "Ma'am, you're under arrest for trespassing, attempted vandalism, and destruction of federally subsidized property." That last part? Music to my ears. Because guess what? Since my solar panels were part of a federal rebate program, damaging them was considered a federal offense. Karen had officially gone too far. Karen's trial became the biggest drama the town had ever seen. The courtroom was packed, neighbors, local reporters, and even some people from the next town over who had heard about the great Karen wars of Oak Ridge Estates. Her defense? Absolutely ridiculous. She was only trespassing because she was concerned about the solar panels violating property values. She wasn't holding a crowbar, she was just using it to lean on. She wasn't trying to steal a solar panel, she was just admiring the craftsmanship. The judge, an older woman who looked like she had zero patience for nonsense, stared at Karen for a long moment and then said, "Ma'am, are you serious?" Karen broke. She started sobbing about how the neighborhood was ruined and how people like me had destroyed everything she had worked for. I could barely contain my grin. The verdict? Guilty. Karen was sentenced to 6 months of probation, community service, and ordered to pay full restitution for the damages. And the best part? Because of her record, she could never legally join another HOA board again. After the trial, Karen finally vanished from our lives. Her house, now owned by a wonderful family who installed even more solar panels, was one of the most energy-efficient homes in the neighborhood. The community thrived. We hosted solar energy workshops. We started a neighborhood co-op. We turned Oak Ridge Estates into a symbol of homeowner freedom. And as for me, I lived my best life. Every morning, I sipped coffee on my porch, watching the sun reflect off my federally protected, Karen-proof solar panels. And every now and then, when I needed a good laugh, I'd pull up the security footage of Karen's dumb little wave and hit play. Because in the end, the sun always wins. Just when I thought Karen had finally been erased from my life like a bad HOA rulebook, the universe had one last surprise in store. It started with a random email. Subject: Interview request. The Karen Wars of Oakridge Estates. Hi, my name. I'm a documentary filmmaker working on a series about neighborhood disputes and extreme HOA stories. I recently came across the legal records regarding Karen Smith and the battle over Oakridge Estates, and I'd love to feature your story in our upcoming episode. Would you be open to an interview? Best, Jordan Wells. I stared at the email, laughing out loud. Karen's legacy of insanity was about to be immortalized on film. I forwarded the email to Greg, and within 10 minutes, the entire neighborhood knew. People lost their minds. We're going to be famous. Can I tell the story about how Karen fined me for having an unauthorized pumpkin during Halloween? Does this mean we get to expose all of Karen's crimes on national TV? The best part? Even the people from Karen's new town heard about it. Apparently, after her failed HOA revival attempt, she had been keeping a low profile. But now, her past was coming back to haunt her. And I had every intention of telling the whole damn story. The film crew arrived a few weeks later. Professional cameras. Boom mics. The whole Netflix special treatment. Greg and I sat on my porch, sipping coffee while telling the wildest suburban war story ever. We recreated Karen's most insane moments. The solar panel vandalism incident. The fake code violation campaign. The illegal crowbar break-in. The final Karen arrest. Greg even acted out her courtroom meltdown, complete with fake crying and dramatic wails about neighborhood values. By the time we finished, the director was crying from laughter. The documentary aired 6 months later. Titled, HOA Horror Stories, The Karen of Oakridge Estates, it went viral overnight. Twitter, or X, or whatever Elon's calling it now, exploded. This woman is a full-blown villain. The crowbar wave moment had me in tears. Why do I feel like this Karen is out there right now, plotting her next HOA takeover? And then, the inevitable happened. Karen saw it. How do I know? Because she sent me one last email. You ruined my life. I hope you're happy. You made a fool of me on national television. This is defamation, and I will be contacting a lawyer. You haven't seen the last of me. I smiled, took a screenshot, and replied, Hi, Karen. Your story was based on public legal records and security footage. No defamation here, just facts. Smiling face with smiling eyes. Best. Oakridge Estates Solar Panel King. She never responded. In the end, Oakridge Estates became a model neighborhood. No HOA. No ridiculous rules. Just people living their damn lives in peace. Karen? She vanished. No one knows where she moved, but some say she's still out there, lurking in another neighborhood, waiting for her chance to rise again. But if she ever dares to return, well, she'll have to face me, Greg, and the army of solar-powered suburban warriors who took her down twice. Because in Oakridge Estates, Karen will never win. I thought the documentary was the last chapter in Karen's saga. But the internet had other plans. A month after the episode aired, Oakridge Estates became a meme. People on Twitter, X, whatever, were posting things like, The Karen of Oakridge Estates is the Thanos of suburban neighborhoods. We need a whole Netflix series on this. Crowbar Karen is the villain origin story I didn't know I needed. And then, the Hollywood people got involved. One day, I got an email from a producer. Subject, Rights Inquiry, HOA Karen Film Adaptation. Hi, my name. I'm a producer at Big Hollywood Studio. We're interested in adapting your story into a scripted comedy drama about the HOA nightmare you endured. Let's talk. I nearly choked on my coffee. I immediately called Greg. Dude, they want to make a movie about us. Greg, ever the pragmatist, asked the most important question. Who's playing me? Hollywood moved fast. Before I knew it, we were on a Zoom call with producers, scriptwriters, and casting directors. The biggest debate? Who should play Karen? The internet had opinions. Meryl Streep? Too classy. Kathy Bates? Too scary. Kristen Wiig? Too funny. Then someone suggested Jamie Lee Curtis. And suddenly, the entire internet agreed. HOA Karen, played by Jamie Lee Curtis. We won. The day the movie trailer dropped, I got a familiar email. How dare you? I cannot believe you are profiting off of my suffering. I will be contacting lawyers. This is slander. I demand a public apology. Karen. I just smiled and hit delete. When the movie finally premiered, Oak Ridge Estates threw a massive watch party. Greg made Karen-shaped piñatas. The elderly couple she once terrorized dressed up as HOA board members and handed out fake violation notices. And me? I sat back, sipping a drink, watching the Hollywood dramatization of my insane, solar-powered suburban war. And I knew, deep in my soul, Karen was somewhere out there, watching it too. Miserable. And I wouldn't have it any other way. I should have known. Just when I thought Karen's saga was finally over, my phone buzzed with an email that made me do a double take. Subject: Exclusive Streaming Rights Inquiry, Netflix. Hi, my name. I'm reaching out on behalf of Netflix Original Films. We're interested in acquiring exclusive streaming rights for the HOA Karen movie and potentially developing a limited series expanding on the story. Let's discuss. I dropped my phone. A limited series? They wanted more Karen? I immediately called Greg. Dude, Netflix wants to turn the movie into a show. Greg, who had just gotten out of jury duty, responded the only way he knew how. If they don't cast Ryan Reynolds as me, I'm not signing off. Netflix moved fast. They secured the streaming rights for the movie, and almost immediately, the series rumors started. Twitter/X exploded. I need a 6-episode miniseries where Karen forms a secret underground HOA. Make it a courtroom drama where she sues everyone, including the government. What if Karen actually went to prison and started running the yard like an HOA board? The writers took notes. Netflix sent over early concept pitches for the limited series. One of them? HOA Karen, The Final Stand. In the show, Karen would rise from the ashes, moving to a new town where she would try to rebuild her HOA empire from scratch. There was just one problem. Karen herself found out. 2 weeks later, I got another email. This time? From Karen's lawyer. Cease and desist notice. Dear my name. Our client, Ms. Karen Smith, is demanding that you and any affiliated production companies immediately cease the unauthorized use of her likeness, name, and personal history. Failure to comply may result in legal action. I stared at the email, then burst out laughing. Karen? Suing Netflix? Greg summed it up best. This is like an ant trying to fight God. Netflix's legal team responded within 24 hours. Their reply? Karen, you were convicted in a public trial. Your story is part of public record. This is not defamation. This is factual storytelling. Translation? Nice try. Sit down. Karen's case was thrown out immediately. And just like that, the series went into full production. When the Netflix series finally dropped, it broke the internet. Karen became the greatest HOA villain of all time. She was interviewed on a morning talk show, trying to defend herself, but it backfired spectacularly. A clip of her yelling, "I was trying to protect the neighborhood," became a viral meme. People started using it for everything. When your Wi-Fi is slow, I was trying to protect the connection. When the grocery store is out of milk, I was trying to protect the dairy aisle. When your HOA bans Halloween decorations, I was trying to protect the neighborhood. Even celebrities joined in. Ryan Reynolds tweeted, "If HOA Karen doesn't get a supervillain origin movie, what are we even doing?" Netflix loved it. Karen? She moved to a remote town in the middle of nowhere. Because for the rest of her life, she would be known as the most infamous HOA dictator in history. And as for me? I sat back, enjoying my royalty checks, watching the sun reflect off my solar panels. The sun always wins. I should have seen it coming. After the Netflix series blew up, It was only a matter of time before another network wanted a piece of the HOA drama goldmine. And then, one day, Greg sent me a text. Dude, HBO just announced Karen Origins. I spit out my coffee. HBO was making a prequel series. A prequel about Karen's rise to HOA power. I immediately checked Twitter/X and sure enough, there it was. HBO Max announces new limited series, Karen Origins. Before she was the HOA villain America loved to hate, Karen Smith was just a woman with a dream. Absolute suburban domination. This was insanity. With the HBO prequel officially greenlit, the internet exploded with debates over who should play young Karen. Florence Pugh? Too cool. Scarlett Johansson? Too glamorous. Elizabeth Olsen? Maybe, but too likable. Then someone suggested Anne Hathaway, and suddenly, it all made sense. Within a week, it was confirmed. Anne Hathaway would play Karen. Twitter/X went nuclear. Anne Hathaway as HOA Karen? We are witnessing cinema. If she doesn't yell, I was trying to protect the neighborhood, at least once, I'm rioting. This is Karen's Breaking Bad arc. The Karen Cinematic Universe, KCU, was now unstoppable. I should have known this would bring her back. Because 2 weeks before the show's premiere, I got another email. Subject, enough is enough. You think this is funny? You think ruining my life was enough? Now there's a show about me? I will be contacting HBO, my lawyer, and the FBI if I have to. This is harassment. I took a screenshot, sent it to Greg, and we both howled with laughter. Greg, ever the genius, simply replied. Someone please cast the real Karen as herself in this series finale. Karen wasn't done fighting. Days before the HBO show premiered, she started a Facebook group called Stop the Lies, Boycott HBO's Karen series. She tried to rally her fellow Karens. It did not go well. Most of the group members were either trolls or fans of the show pretending to support her. One person wrote, Karen, I just want to say you are an inspiration. I, too, once tried to report my neighbor for using an unapproved shade of beige. #stay strong. She banned half the group before shutting it down completely. The HBO show premiered anyway. And it was a masterpiece. After months of public humiliation, viral memes, and multiple failed lawsuits, Karen finally disappeared. No one knew where she went. Rumors spread that she had moved to a remote town where there were no HOAs to rule over. Others believed she was hiding under a fake name, waiting for the day she could rise again. Either way, her reign was over. And Oak Ridge Estates? It thrived. No HOA. No drama. Just a neighborhood living free. And every morning, as I drank my coffee, I looked at my Karen-proof, federally protected solar panels and smiled. Because no matter how many networks tried to reboot Karen's story, she would never win. Karen had escaped justice too many times. She had lied, manipulated, and terrorized an entire neighborhood for years. She had tried to destroy my solar panels, file bogus legal claims, and even break into my property with a crowbar. But now, she was finally going to pay, because the FBI got involved. I thought Karen was gone for good, hiding in some remote HOA-less town, but then I got a call from a federal investigator. Mr. My name, the voice said. I'm Agent Roberts with the Department of Justice. We're reaching out regarding a case involving fraudulent HOA financial activity. I blinked. I think you have the wrong guy. Agent Roberts paused. You were part of the legal case against Karen Smith, correct? Oh no. Or rather, oh yes. What did she do? I asked, barely containing my glee. The agent sighed. It appears that during her time as an HOA official, Ms. Smith was involved in embezzling HOA funds from multiple neighborhoods, Oak Ridge Estates included. I nearly fell out of my chair. Karen, who had ruined lives over minor rule violations, had been stealing from the HOA all along. It wasn't just our neighborhood. Karen had been involved in multiple HOAs before ours, each time handling the budget, and each time mysteriously resigning before anyone caught on. Until now. When Karen was officially indicted, it was all over the news. The charges? Wire fraud. embezzlement, tax evasion, because of course she didn't report her stolen HOA funds. She tried everything to weasel her way out of it. She blamed the HOA treasurer. She claimed the money was a clerical error. She even tried to frame me. That last one was hilarious. Her lawyer actually argued in court that I had led a conspiracy to destroy her reputation. The judge? Not impressed. And then? The FBI dropped the evidence. Years of misused funds. Thousands of fraudulent charges. Karen's face turned ghost white. She knew. It was over. The verdict came back guilty on all counts. Karen was sentenced to 6 years in federal prison. When the judge asked if she had any last words, she snapped. "This is unfair," she screeched. I was trying to protect the neighborhood. The courtroom erupted in laughter. It was the meme heard round the world. Hashtag trying to protect the neighborhood trended for weeks. With Karen locked away, every HOA she had ever controlled crumbled. Oakridge Estates? Free and thriving. The neighborhoods she stole from? They sued her estate and got every stolen penny back. Karen's name? Forever associated with one of the biggest HOA corruption scandals in history. And the best part? With a felony conviction, Karen would never legally be allowed to serve on any HOA board again. Ever. Years later, I still live in Oakridge Estates. No HOA. No dumb rules. Just happy homeowners living their lives. Greg got promoted to a city council position where he fights against HOA overreach. And me? I sit on my porch every morning, drinking coffee, watching the sun reflect off my shiny, Karen-proof solar panels. Because no matter how hard she tried, no matter how many times she schemed, lied, and fought, Karen lost. And the sun always wins.